All right. Hope you all had a chance to see some old friends and make some new ones during that break. Again, like we said, the point of all of us being here is one, to get re-energized to do the work that we need to do for children, and also to really learn from each other. I'm Claudia Hoyen. I'm the Secretary of ISPI, and am so delighted to be here, and even more delighted that all of you are here with us on our journey as we, as I said, work together to make things better for kids, and learn from one another. So we're going to be going into our panel discussion right now. It's our first panel of the 2 days. So we're excited to have a really amazing group of people joining us throughout these next 2 days. I just wanted to say that in the interest of time, we really need to learn from each other. So we are just really going to be introducing our panelists. There are full bios for all of these amazing people online. So if you feel like you want to learn more about some of the people speaking, don't hesitate to jump on the website and read more about everybody. But as I said, in the interest of time, we're just going to go ahead and keep things moving for all of us because we have a lot to learn. So we're going to be discussing innovation best practices in children's hospitals. And I know if anyone in the room feels like I do, and I'm sure there are some of you, we're kind of making this up as we go. And you know, there is no set way of doing it. And so one of the things that we can really do for each other is to learn from each other, so that when we're going home and fighting those battles and trying to get people to understand what it is we're trying to do, we have knowledge from others and can really share things that other people are doing. So behind me are our amazing panelists. We have Mickey Foken, who is the Director of Evaluation and Program Development at Children's Hospital Texas in Dallas. And he'll be our first person. And we'll just roll right through the whole group. Next is Alberto Rio, and he is the VP of Information Management and the CIO at Rady Children's Hospital. And finally, we have a dear friend, James Wall, who's been with us for a long time. He is an assistant professor of surgery at Stanford, and his area of expertise is biodesign. So we're going to have each of them share with us their journey of their innovation program, and then we'll have time for question and answers. Mickey?
All right, thank you very much for having us today, everybody, and appreciate being here. So yeah, we're just going to provide a quick overview from our perspective. I want to talk a little bit about how we approached innovation from a programmatic angle. We were on a little bit different journey, I think, than a lot of you are right now, and then maybe some of you are about to approach, where we were doing a lot of innovation already at our system. And so we were charged with, hey, you guys are doing some good stuff now. How can you take it to the next level? Because we were doing some things around innovation around mobile app development, co-development. We have an active ventures group. A couple of the projects that we were pretty excited about was partnering with Rank One Sport, where we developed internally within our health system a mobile app that can be used across high schools in Texas, gaining access to all of their existing customer base, so a good joint venture and co-development activity. We also developed in-house a diabetes advisor app that we're currently piloting in our endocrinology clinic, where it helps patients when they're having a sick day event. And so this is a really amazing activity. I'm very proud of the team that created this app solution. And it ended up winning first place in the Digital Diabetes Congress Mobile App Award. So the big question we had is, okay, we're doing innovation, but what's missing? What can we do to make our program better, as we're always learning and growing? And this is where iSpy came into play. Very grateful to Sherry and the group who helped us connect to a lot of y'all. You were very welcoming in answering our questions when we were comparing our programs to your programs, and helping us identify what programmatic aspects were missing from our program. So what did we learn? Innovators need our help. If you're one of the few that already know how to navigate approval processes, already know how to secure funding, you're doing great. But what about that new provider or that new nurse or that new affiliate partner that has an idea and doesn't know where to start? And so we were missing just some of those governance/process aspects. So over the last few months, we've set up an innovation advisory group where it's a combination of leadership from IS, marketing, compliance, privacy, legal, all those groups to help educate on the approval processes and remove barriers when something is, not moving as quickly as it could be. We also set up a process where innovators can go online and submit their idea so that at least they have a starting point, and we reallocated a couple FTEs to serve as what we call innovation coaches. So this is basically a champion or an advocate to partner with the innovator to educate them on the processes. The other thing we did is help innovators understand what is innovation and when to engage us. We currently, and this is a work in progress, in our portfolio, I would say about a fourth of the projects really aren't innovation projects where we're creating something new. It's taking a neat technology that somebody heard about and said, hey, I want you to go talk to this vendor. And so a lot of times we enjoy chatting with them, but we're really trying to hone in on the projects where we're solving a problem by creating something new or helping validate a technology pre-market. And so that's a big education campaign of helping our different clinical partners and administrative partners know when to engage us. So that's been a few of the quick wins that we've implemented since talking with a lot of y'all. And then here we have a list of a bunch of our future initiatives to continue to enhance our program from a higher level. I won't read through them all. I think some of the things we're pretty excited about, more than once it's come up where we want to set up a quarterly clinical innovators, almost like networking group or special interest group, as they call it in ATA, Telemedicine Association, where they can share ideas on what they've been working on or if they've come across a new technology. It'll also give us a structure where if we come across a group that is looking for a testbed population to do a validation project, we can socialize it with them and they might have access to a clinical champion that might want to hear more. So you can see a lot of these things are around, I guess, the process of innovation and ensuring that we have our foundation in place. The other thing I think I would touch on this list is the region and the market in Dallas-Fort Worth. It's very interesting in the sense that there's multiple organizations such as ourselves and other accelerators that we're all doing really good work, but we're not always working together. And so we've already started discussions and conversations around, hey, you do this, we do this, where can we both work together in a way that provides value and do some collaborative projects? And so really making sure that you're partnering with and working with the resources that are available in your region. So that's some of the work that we've been doing. We're definitely staying busy. And again, appreciate all the welcome that we've received in the iSpy community here and answering our questions. Appreciate it, everybody.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Albert, if you want to tell us your story, that'd be great.
Sure thing. So thank you for having me here, and pleased to be in the company of the distinguished panel and the audience. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the importance of taking something from the lab to operations, and I wanted to illustrate it with the work that our Genomic Institute has done to bring automated diagnosis using rapid whole genome sequencing to the NICU and PICU. And oh, here we go. I knew I was missing something. So for us, we think about innovation in a revolutionary kind of way, but for us this was more of an evolution. We started talking genomics in 2012, and it wasn't until mid-2014 where after working on a business plan, our benefactor made a big $120 million gift to start an institute. Then it took us over a year to find the right person to lead this institute. And that was Stephen Kingsmore. And one of the things that we learned when he came on board is that 30% of the kids in the NICU have a genetic basis to their disease, but also there's over 8,000 known genetic defects, many of which are treatable if you can get to them early enough. So that gave us focus. But we started the Genomics Institute on an NIH grant, really. That was what Stephen had, and we had a very research-given process to operate. But part of it was very manual, extracting data from the EHR and then doing the variant interpretation. It was incredibly manual, and it didn't scale. But even at small volumes, we started seeing great outcomes, 30% diagnostic rates, 25% changes in clinical management, 20% changes of outcomes. And so others were interested, and through networks like this, we suddenly became the rapid whole genome sequencing lab for, I think we're on 25 other institutions now and counting. But how do we scale this, right? When we have a process that's incredibly manual, it's by bringing people together. This is something that came out of the Genomics Institute, but we can do it without informatics and without IT. And I'm going to talk at it from the IT perspective. I'll let the clinical adoption be addressed in the question and answer section if you'd like. But basically here what we needed to do was to bring our informatics teams, our genomics teams, our IT teams to start thinking upstream. How do we best capture data in the EHR? How do we abstract the data in the nodes and merge various different ontologies, and so that we can automate this process? And lo and behold, we were able to do this, and now this is all automated. There's a great article in Science that describes the process at length, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But the key here was to take this pilot to production. And typically, when we deal with innovation, we deal with something like this, right? A bunch of very bright people with great ideas that come up with something in a lab, and then they go over the fence, and there are people in production on the other side who need to catch this ball that's kicked over the fence and try to make it work and scale it and support it. And that's a challenge. So I don't want to say necessarily that you need to blend all this stuff together all the time, but you need to figure out how to work across fences and how to play across fences. And that's what we did. We had the person that leads IT in the Genomics Institute has a dual reporting relationship to the Genomics Institute CEO and to me. He's a member of the IT team as well as of the genomics team. So his peers, when he needs something from the informatics team or from the infrastructure team, they see him as one of our own. He's also able to articulate early on the barriers that the research community see operations providing, right? They tend to think about operations as these people whose sole mission is to put up barriers to the great ideas they have. And on the other hand, many operations people tend to think of these folks in the lab as these brilliant geniuses who can drive their way out of a parking lot if their life depended on it. And so being able to start that communication early made a big difference. It's all about teamwork. So I was thinking about what were those key factors, and then I realized that, you know what, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's this great book that I read, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago by Walter Isaacson called The Innovators, and he talks about some of these things, and one is building off of strengths. We had a huge NICU, we had an NIH grant, it made sense for us to go there. Obviously, securing funding from multiple sources made a big difference. Multidisciplinary collaboration is how do we start early on bringing folks together, thinking about how to get that innovation on the field and scalable. looking for trust-based partnerships. We realized we couldn't do this all on our own. Genomics couldn't do it on our own, IT couldn't do it on our own, the clinical side of the house couldn't do it on our own. Even all three aspects of it together couldn't do it on our own. We needed to go look for third-party vendor partners to help us out and making sure that those were aligned and that we had a solid basis of trust. And last, keeping our focus, making sure that we had kind of weekly touch points, ongoing meetings to validate progress, to work on processes so that this didn't become a thing where we develop something and now it's done, go implement it. From day one, we were thinking about how do we implement this thing. So I will close with one thought, and it's a quote that's been attributed to many people, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and Jack Welch at the very least, but others as well, and that is vision without execution is hallucination. And what I will say is that giving thought to how we think about bringing that innovation from the lab to operations is key if we're going to make a difference and change the world.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to stand up because my watch told me I'm being lazy.
Okay. You've got one of those apps, huh?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
follows you around.
I just flew through the first slide, but I'm going to talk a little bit in just 5 minutes here on what I call 0 to 1 in PEDS innovation. I'm just going to give you two personal journeys of taking devices and going through the process of trying to scale them beyond just our children's hospital. How do you set yourself up for success where something's valuable enough it'll get out to other people? Disclosures, I'm an entrepreneur. I have interest in both of these companies I talk about, which is why I can talk about them with expertise, and both are being marketed in the US. So here's the first thing when a group comes to our pediatric innovation accelerator within the university, and we talk about how they're going to set themselves up for success. Can you answer this question? Is your market opportunity? Have you met an unmet clinical need? Is there real value? Are people going to pay for it? And then how much is it going to cost you to develop it? And if those are not aligned, you're going to have a real problem in creating a sustainable company and the potential to return investment, whether that investment's from the hospital, private capital, et cetera. So I'm going to tell you a tale of two technologies with two very different equations so that I can maybe highlight the challenges but also the opportunities of pediatrics. Radial Medical is a company I co-founded that works on a wearable leg compression system for venous insufficiency and DVT. It's addressing a $2 billion market opportunity with well over 12 million patients, maybe up to 50 million. And we're looking to spend $40 million to develop that technology. That equation works. Novonate is a pediatric, highly niche company that I helped advise and is now spun out of Stanford. They're developing a securement device for umbilical catheters in the NICU, very small population, but high impact. So that's a potential maybe $20 million market, and we had the audacity to think we could develop it for $1 million of private capital anyway, and we'll talk about that part of the story. So when we evaluate any potential technology that we think we can scale, we say, have you met an unmet need, and is there real market value to what you're doing? So for radial, like compression, the need was compression works, but current implementation is really poor and patients don't comply with it. The opportunity is there for a system that's wearable. Our innovation here was leveraging new technologies, specifically a drone motor and modern iPhone type chips or whatever, mobile chips. Put those together in a very high-tech but low cost of goods system that's comfortable and wearable. We've done clinical trials to show that the compression works as well as the existing systems, and patients prefer it. In addition, it's got tech integration. It digitally enables, as we heard from our first talk this morning, it digitally engages, it texts, et cetera, to make sure that patients actually wear it. And ultimately, we have new capabilities because it's high tech where we're able to monitor response to therapy. So a lot of potential value there. How did we develop this? Well, this is kind of the classic Silicon Valley model, right? This is a big adult opportunity. Two relatively experienced entrepreneurs started in a garage, raised $300,000 to prove that the technology worked, raised $5 million to get it to early commercial launch, and is now in the middle of raising a commercial round. So and it received 510(k) clearance and kind of went through all that process. So what I really want to give you to give you a contrast to what it's like to develop something in peds. And this is the story of Novonate. Our CEO and founder, Eric Chahab's here. You should talk to him about this. He's the one behind it, and he's going to get a chance to talk later. So umbilical catheters in the NICU, really critically important. 200,000 are placed a year in the US. Almost half, based on recent studies, can migrate or be displaced. There's an association between that and infections cost a lot of money. So this is something that matters and its real potential value. What's different about the NICU and adults? Well, it's ridiculous when you look at this picture, right? I mean, adult central lines, lifelines, have very low infection rate. They have standard protocols. They have great devices that help stabilize them and protect them from infection. What do we currently do at Stanford Children's Health and everybody else, not just us? We use a chunk of non-sterile tape to hold a lifeline in a premature baby who's immunocompromised. It's silly, and Eric and his team were smart enough to say that we can do this better. So they developed this device, which I won't go into too much detail, but securement protection of the umbilical lines. It is currently being used in multiple NICUs in Northern California and going out more broadly. The point of this story is that they developed this within Stanford on very limited resources. They did all this work, biological testing, mechanical testing, NICU nurse input, which is probably the biggest reason for success within the university, and developed a system that's very easy to use. And I think the story here is ultimately this, which is that this is very different from the classic model, right? They used grant funding. They used a whole bunch of people willing to give up their time, from med students to engineering students, used Stanford facilities, Packard facilities, and then after taking a whole lot of risk out of it on very little capital, they're using now a small amount of private capital to get this to NICUs. And between these two projects, I have to say I'm going to bet this one scales more quickly, returns money to its investors, and makes a bigger impact in a shorter period of time. I'm not going to go into these lessons. I'm happy to talk about them in the questions, but things we've learned from those two stories. The ultimate picture here I love is maybe David can beat Goliath. This is Life Bubble at AdvaMed a couple years ago. Total human use 0, right next to J&J, total annual revenue of $70 billion. So there's a chance for us in peds. Thank you.
Those were really great stories. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a question for Mickey. So, Mickey, it sounds like sometimes at Rainbow we're still kind of where you were a little bit ago. And when you kind of really put some structure and program around all of the resources that you had, did you need to add more people? Because it seems like you have a lot of different groups. You've got the innovation coach, the advisory group. So did you had to add more people, or were you able to kind of repurpose people? How did you do that?
So I'll start by saying I wish we could have added people.
Sorry.
That's always the case when you're trying to ensure that you can execute your program the way that you need to and want to. But we were in a situation like a lot of you all are in, where we're asked to stay flat, and so we needed to repurpose. Okay. And that actually, when we were interviewing, we interviewed about 13 different pediatric innovation centers, including one from the UK. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are always operating on a tight budget and a shoestring budget, and more than once we heard of examples where they would transition people from IT or from another role into innovation. And so that's the route that we're pursuing.
Okay. Do we have questions from the audience? I can't see, so if, Sherry, you I could see.
So I have a question. As you all know, I'm very involved in the pediatric innovation world as well, and something that we seem to experience over and over again, and I also hear from entrepreneurs as well, is the challenge of addressing pediatric hospitals and how risk averse they are. So any of you can take the question, but I'd like to know how in your organizations you have been able to move things from the lab to the bedside and address whether it's the value proposition team, whether it's the internal value analysis team, maybe it's the head of NICU saying, wait, this is a teeny tiny little baby. We're not doing anything that even looks like it could remotely present a risk.
I could jump on that one just with a short example. So since we set up our process to generate new ideas, one group came to us around an opportunity to try an alternate patient identification technology instead of wristbands. But this technology required some adhesive onto the skin, and so we really had to focus on what populations can we start with that are lower risk clinically to test out this technology and see if it works. And then also use the approach of what other things exist that use similar type of adhesive, so that way we can know if this is totally new or not. But heavily involving a clinical champion and then heavily involving our quality and safety committee has been a great benefactor in ensuring that we're pursuing the right opportunities that we can ensure are low risk clinically.
I'll build on that. So one of my solutions, Sherry, I actually joined the value committee and I now chair it. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, I recuse myself if it's a technology I'm involved in, but I think it's an incredible learning opportunity for innovators to see how value committees work. I think that probably expands to others, other roadblocks. And then the other thing is that we, in the development of this, as well as other technologies, we've had Lully and Tuio that have both been great examples recently of digital solutions that have scaled. Tuio was just acquired by Apple. Each one of those, we engage the clinicians. I think, to Mickey's point, that engaging them early, not only the clinicians, but in the Novonate example, the nurses, so that they were not only, we weren't selling to them, they were our design partners, and they became advocates because they were part of that early process. And so I think really engaging everyone early on in whichever case we can talk about is really important, and then learning all those barriers and how to break them down.
So I will add to that to say I look at it maybe in two different buckets. Bucket number one is the innovation something that is initiated in-house? And that tends to have a natural funnel, if you will. It has natural champions in I think the risk tolerance for the known quantity, that's the champion that's leading it, et cetera, tends to have one path that moves faster, is more open, if you will. Then there is the third party innovation, and that tends to be tougher, and it tends to be tougher because they have to go through committees. We have, most of us, kind of a set of limited budgets, and we need to prioritize. And then truly, I think it becomes a matter of is there an expected return that is clear, and is there a strong champion? I mean, ultimately, this comes to people.
All right. We're out of time. Unfortunately, I know there's a lot more to learn and a lot more to share. So there are breaks, there's lunch. Feel free to find our panelists and dig a little deeper into the great stories that they shared with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.